supply chain, we're constantly seeking the truth. What's the provenance of goods? What's the background of their supplier? For those of us in procurement and supply chain, to quote Oscar Wilde, the truth is rarely pure and never simple. But times might be about to change. New technology in the form of blockchain can make our supply chains more traceable, transparent, and fully digital. Our very own 21st century Truthsayer. Hello, I'm Tanya Theory, founder of Procurious. Welcome to today's webinar, Blockchain, 21st Century Truthsayer. My two guests joining me on the webinar today are Sherry Diaz, Innovation Strategy and Operations Program Director at IBM Watson Supply Chain, and Professor Alinga Taib, Director of the Center of Citizenship, Enterprise and Governance. Sherry Diaz has 20 years of professional experience, 16 of which have been with IBM, spanning engineering, sales, customer fulfillment, services and hardware procurement, global business transformation, e-commerce, and most recently, the Watson Supply Chain Offering Management. Shari is a global program director and has deep expertise in supply chain strategy and operations management, e-commerce, B2B trends and technology, and large-scale business transformation and innovation. She has extensive experience in retail, utility, industrial, and airline travel industries. Shari is a proven business leader with a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Cincinnati, a Master of Science in Industrial Engineering from Arizona State University, and an MBA focused on International Management from Thunderbird. Now that is an impressive resume, so I'm looking forward to hearing from Sherry, and afterwards I want to talk to her about this Thunderbird degree because I really wanted to do that myself. So needless to say, Sherry, with her experiences in business and engineering, her passion for problem solving is the perfect person to have on the webinar today. So welcome, Sherry.
Thank you, Tanya. I'm happy to be here.
My other guest today is Professor Alinga Taib. Professor Alinga Taib is Director of the not-for-profit Center for Citizenship, Enterprise and Governance, the world's leading think tank on the movement of value, measurement, transaction and delivery. He is also visiting professor in blockchain at Birmingham City University and was previously professor in social enterprise at Northampton University. Alinga is chief editor of peer-reviewed academic journal Frontiers in Blockchain, Social Value and Intangibles Review, and UK government-sponsored Efficiency Exchange. In 2019, he plans to launch the peer-reviewed industry journal, The Token, Cryptocurrency Value and Values with New York publisher Peter Lang. Alinga is council member and expert advisor to the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, China E-Commerce Blockchain Committee, responsible for growth to US $100 trillion and maintaining its current 70% global market share. He is also head of the EU procurement. This is an incredible resume here, Alinga. Alinga conducted the UK's first and only ICO in 2017 with FCA guidance, the Ceratio token focusing on non-financial assets. He is currently preparing to launch the £210 million Ceratio DTL Open Bank, regulated in London by PRA and FCA, and launched in September 2019 in Kenya, the international NGO Transnational Transparent Procurement. Alinga, it's fantastic to have you. I think we first met when you were the professor in social enterprise at Northampton, and it's great to see you right in the center of blockchain, so thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure, Tanya. As always, it's great to take part in Procurious.
Thank you, Alinga. Well, Alinga and Sherry, let's get started. In the odd chance that someone out there who's listening today has been out of the loop on the hottest technologies and may not be 100% sure what blockchain actually is, I'm going to ask you both to give us a brief overview of the technology and how it works in the supply chain. Sherry, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So blockchain is really the coming together of some technologies we've had for a very long time, like cryptography, like digital distributed ledgers. But the thing about blockchain is it really brings enterprises together. It is the technology that is the best suited available to solve challenges that ecosystems of companies working together can agree to go solve. So the fundamentals of the technology are about trust and transparency. It's about creating a digital ledger that we can all see. Number one, it's transparent, and we can all have faith in the information on that ledger, trust. So the technology, again, through those algorithms and cryptography, has the ability to allow participants on a blockchain solution to propose events. There's what we call the consensus algorithm that confirms and validates the participant proposing the event is who they say they are, and the event that they're proposing actually did happen. So we put it on the ledger, we circulate that to everyone's copy, and we all have, again, that trust and transparency that we're looking for. And what that enables is speed and efficiency. We're able to work better together, right? So, from a supply chain perspective, there's no technology, supply chains are ecosystems of partners working together, right? We work better together when we can all trust and see the same set of data. So there's a lot of other bits about blockchain, but, really when I think about it and what I would want our listeners to take away, it's a technology suited for multiple enterprises, multiple entities. It doesn't have to be businesses. It can be governments. It can be agencies, other things, to come together and really go tackle a problem together.
I love that, working better together, and I'm sure all our listeners will appreciate how much time they've spent trying to get agreement between buyer, supplier, and other members of the supply chain on what the actual truth is, like where is the, the data that will give you all the answers. So I think that that's something that everyone would value from, was working better together, and certainly data is the cause of a lot of, let's just say, heated discussions. Alinga, what's your view on blockchain, and how would you define it to someone who wasn't quite sure?
Okay, I think Sherry gave a fantastic response there, so I'm not going to repeat her brilliant explanation, but what I will add are two elements which are fairly specific. So in terms of procurement, we're trying to always marry issues around the value of what we're trying to procure, the transaction, the certification that we have to comply with, and like ESG and environment, et cetera, and modern slavery, and social value and so on. And then the responsibility for the wider community, the circular economy that our procurement is expected to create. That's a big responsibility for people in procurement. So what blockchain does is provides a process tool, because procurement is primarily a process-driven process-driven industry and professional, and they have found it difficult sometimes to work strategically. Hence, issues around board representation, etc. So blockchain adds a couple of things in addition to Shari's explanation. One is it has the ability to have something called a smart contract. In blockchain, the code is law, and smart contract is simply, if this, do that. If there is modern slavery in this chain, then do not transact. Or if it is an excellent creative social value or aligned to our organization, if this product or process or project or the organization we're dealing with or even the person is aligned to what we're doing, then it's a green light, and it can even graduate to how much of a green light. So the second element of blockchain, which is often promoted as of great use, is the utility of something around the token that represents the value of an organization. So if an organization pays a small part of its supply chain in its own token, then it has the ability to make sure that anyone using that token to actually transact and exchange for real money can be aligned to the organization's values. So those are the two small parts that I would add.
And people are often getting the two, sort of mixed up. They get all alarmed about cryptocurrency, but blockchain is its own underlying technology, and sort of crypto and the currency side is something, almost that builds on it, isn't it? So they can be mutually exclusive.
Speaking about cryptocurrencies, there's one additional, element of the blockchain that I want to make sure our listeners understand. There's a difference between a public blockchain, which is the technology that underpins the cryptocurrencies, and a private blockchain, which is what we're seeing used more regularly in supply chain problems. The differences between public and private are, in a public blockchain, anyone can join. There's no, request to be a member. There's no approval process. Anyone that wants to can join. And when you're, as a participant in the network, you're anonymous, right? You don't necessarily know who the other entities are. You just know that they're, like yourself, participants in this solution. On the other side, for supply chain and some of the use cases and examples we'll get into later on the webinar, that's private blockchain, right? And what that means is we do know who each actor, each participant in that solution is. They are validated. Their identity is validated as part of the technology. And it's not a wide open door for anyone that wants to come in and participate. The membership or the consortium that governs that particular blockchain solution sets the membership guidelines and determines who can join and who should not. Okay,
so thank you for that clarification. Yeah, it's quite different. So, Sherry, what are some of the popular use cases where blockchain can be leveraged in the supply chain?
So, yeah, we're seeing a ton of use cases around what we call traceability, right? Knowing where did the raw materials come from that went into the product as it moved through the supply chain, the manufacturing process, and to the end consumer. So we really want to be able to know, who had custody of the good, what was the condition of that particular item all the way through. And again, that helps us in so many ways, again, for efficiency. I'll always start there. Supply chains are constantly seeking efficiency. And if we have that information, we can see things moving, through the supply chain. We're all going to operate better. The other thing is fraud and counterfeit parts, right? We want to keep that stuff out of our supply chains. So if we know exactly where our raw materials and our components have been and where they came from, we're sure that we don't have counterfeit parts or anything, happening that shouldn't be happening upstream in our supply chains. So, that traceability is our number one use case in supply chain, and then really getting the fraud and the counterfeiting out of the system is another one where we're seeing a lot of solutions crop up.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, time and resources are critical, obviously, in all supply chains, but the food industry in particular, I think we're seeing a lot of use cases where, delays can be devastating. So, Linda, maybe if we throw to you, how can blockchain support organisations to have the right information at the right time, particularly in the food industry?
Okay, so Shari concentrated on the absolute correct value in procurement around provenance of products, provenance of processes, so that everyone within the supply chain can know where the product came from, how many people made it, and the welfare of those people, and so on. So, because in the end, nobody wants to use, leather products, maybe if it's difficult for them to understand how it's created, etc. The other issue is around disintermediation. So blockchain can remove the middle parties, and that means it can lower the price of the product to the end chain. This is of great value to people within the supply chain. So blockchain is not only a great advantage to the top-down from the buyer's point of view, but also for the supplier, it can remove, where they go from making something within the field in South America to the to a retailer shelf. It can actually remove several parts in between and thus bring the price down or give greater value to the producer, which is often not the case. So I think those were the additional points I would add.
Oh, thank you. What about you, Sherry? What are you seeing in the food industry? I mean, you've had some incredible development there, haven't you?
We have. This is one of the use cases that IBM has absolutely mustered our resources and gone after it, with enthusiasm. We look at the food industry and, looking at things that affected the supply chain, like outbreaks of E. coli or other foodborne diseases. If you think back to, in the United States in 2006, there was an E. coli outbreak for spinach that actually, when they were finally able to trace it back, it came from a very small, farming area in California. But at the time, folks were getting sick, and nobody knew which, spinach was actually causing the illness. So we pulled the FDA required all the spinach be pulled from the shelves, right? Think about how that impacted that industry. It took the U.S. population years to get back to consuming the same amount of spinach as they did prior to that outbreak. People were scared, rightfully so. And the supply chains didn't have the data that they needed to efficiently handle that and move forward. So we have a solution at IBM. It's called IBM Food Trust, and we've developed that in partnership with many, many large industries in this space. And it started, trying to be able to efficiently recall food that had been contaminated or wasn't fit for consumption for any reason. That was the initial objective. And we now, if you have your particular products enabled on IBM Food Trust, you can scan a barcode or a QR code in the grocery store on a package, and you can see the entire lineage or provenance of that product in 2.2 seconds.
Wow.
It's amazing. So in our efforts then to enable that particular objective, we are also finding ways to track food waste and to better distribute food to avoid that waste. We're finding ways to do so many more things. We actually have participants in Food Trust saying that it's boosting sales. There are consumers that want that information. They want that trust, right? And those that are going through organic labeling, do you trust that organic label, right? So we're seeing all kinds of offshoots from that original objective where the industry could really come together and solve a problem they all faced. And now it's really growing some tentacles in some fantastic directions. So the food supply chain is absolutely one of those where blockchain was the right technology, for the right problem. So it's very exciting.
Well, I think the Australians also would have benefited from that recently. There was a large strawberry issue. There was some inclusions in some strawberries, and I think they will take many years to recover from that as well.
Yeah.
Lindsay, why don't we build on this topic of trust? And I think there's been some recent research at Penn State University saying that, lack of trust reduces the level of opportunistic behaviour between parties. So I think that makes sense. The more we trust each other, the more creative we are and the more fabulous things we do together. And as Sherry just pointed out, trust takes many years to build but seconds to destroy. How can blockchain help with this issue?
Okay, that's a great question, and I want to build on what Sherry mentioned by answering that question. So if you imagine blockchain is one part of what's called the fourth industrial revolution, of which there is also AI, there's IoT, Internet of Things, and then there's some other other technologies as well.
Yeah.
So I guess as part of that entire movement, it fits in very closely to a new digital awareness that we're coming. Shari mentioned the great idea that you go into a shop. We're all used to picking up a product, and it says a food product, and it'll say calories. It'll say if it's good for us, bad for it. But at the point of buying, we need to know the provenance of that product. We need to know, can we trust if that product is good for us and is also aligned to us. And alignment is something that companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon have worked very hard to use things like sentiment analysis to understand their customers, to understand our wishes, our hopes, and our dreams, and to provide products that are close to us. And things which concern us as well, and to not provide stuff that is not aligned to us. This alignment actually does build trust. It means if I know that every time using technology such as the IBM one or others, which are offered to me are aligned to my values or to my hopes or to my taste or to a myriad of sentiments which we carry. Blockchain enables that to happen within the supply chain, and it means the ultimate customer, the consumer, usually benefits tremendously, and this is the exciting part of it all.
Shari, you've just announced Trust Your Supplier, which is right on topic here. Can you tell us more about it and how it will drive change in supply chain?
Sure. So think of Trust Your Supplier as a directory of supplier information, the names of the suppliers, what they do, where they're located, what certifications they have, what is their past history, and all those kinds of things. In procurement, one of the first things we do when we know we need to source something is try to put together a list of candidate suppliers. And when we come up with that list, that takes time in and of itself. The next thing we do is all of those that made the candidate list, we send them a questionnaire that's anywhere from, 20 to 200 questions long, depending on what exactly you're procuring and what's the nature of the relationships. So what we're really trying to do here is streamline those initial steps of the procurement process, allowing suppliers, candidate suppliers, to create their record on the directory, Trust Your Supplier. It will have all of that information that they provide, and anything that is, a claim of a certification by some third-party organization, that third-party organization will be asked to validate that certification has happened and is still up to date, right? So when a procurement organization goes to Trust Your Supplier to generate that initial candidate list, they'll also have the answers to those most commonly asked questions in that initial stage of down selecting suppliers. So that's again, with blockchain, we start somewhere, and that's our starting point with Trust Your Supplier. But I got to tell you, one of the other, avenues we're pursuing is that this will ultimately enable master data management as a task in all of our enterprises, right? Think about that. The suppliers maintaining their own data, and we tap into the blockchain for master data management. So
invaluable.
I've made so many phone calls trying to validate supplier data. I, for one, am looking forward to giving all of the procurement professionals all that time back.
Yeah, exactly. And to be able to trust the data as well, not only but trust the data. And, for suppliers, a huge benefit. I mean, they're pre-qualified, they're there, they don't have to do the work either. So, I mean, this is going to be a real game changer.
Exactly.
Now, Linda, I haven't seen you since Zurich last year, and I know you've been very busy launching some new initiatives. So do you mind telling us what you've been doing We know that Sherry's been busy building trust for your supplier. What have you been up to?
Nothing compared to Sherry. So I guess what we have found is that we are, institutional play in blockchain was rare at the very beginning. And IBM, in fact, pioneered this, I would say. They led the way and the others followed. And now we're finding that institutional play is coming in, and so we are getting some very large projects, and we frankly, don't need to work on the smaller stuff. So one small one, was the idea of a blockchain bank, a DLT bank, a distributed ledger technology bank, where you can not just bank your gold and land and money stuff, normal hard assets, but also intangible assets like love, hope, and happiness. Now, this sounds extraordinary, but it actually has a procurement and a supply chain angle, because very much, it's procurement and supply chain is not just a responsibility to move a hard financial tangible asset, but also to move other kinds of assets through. And mentioning, Shari mentioned that these processes that the IBM system is bringing is fantastic, because as you will know, Tanya, in my speeches with Procurious, often the question is, am I going to lose my job because of blockchain or AI? Does this mean we're no longer required? Actually, what it's going to do is liberate the market to allow you to work strategically in your role as a profession. The other thing, much more relevant and direct relevant, is we launched a large foundation, not-for-profit foundation called Transnational Transparent Procurement, and we launched it in Kenya about a week ago. We already have around 162,000 members in that think tank, and it's to use all kinds of fourth industrial revolution technologies like blockchain, like AI, like IoT, and to try and fathom out, not with money involved, how it's going to actually aid the supply chain and the sector. So that has gone much better than we expected, and we have around 300 large retailers who approached us already, which is exciting, which it's caught us by surprise and interested by surprise.
Well, people always get surprised when good things happen, but you've actually been working on this for a few decades. People say, gee, it happened overnight. No, I think you've been working hard for a long time on, social enterprises, blockchain. So
I'm only 18, Tanya, so how can I be...
Oh, no, you look so beautiful and you are so beautiful. Look, as we start to bring this to a close, the discussion today, we've obviously called this webinar Blockchain, the 21st Century Truthsayer. I'm going to ask both of you, what's the most important piece of truth you think blockchain is going to help us with in procurement and supply chain? Alenka, you useful thought leader, what do you think?
For me, the biggest movement that blockchain enables is it's uniting what my feeling is, what's in my heart, my aligning my values to what I do. In my normal life, I will procure with non-financial values. So I will buy a car, I will wear, clothes that I feel empowered in, and it's not a financial instrument, procurement. But in the industry, the supply chain industry, we have struggled to find something where we can replicate what we do in our normal lives within that. And I think blockchain will light up the path to allow and unify our own lives with our profession, with mankind. As you know, I've often said, procurement and supply chain, is the single greatest instrument to change the world. And I believe blockchain, with some other technologies, will enable this to happen and for us to take the correct place in society.
Wow, that just makes us all feel fantastic. Sure, you thought you were just working on a groundbreaking technology project, but you're actually saving the world. And but I think there's a lot of truth, obviously, in what Alenka is saying. these initiatives, and when we look at transparency and uncovering, child labour, slavery, it's going to be amazing. So, Sherry, what do you think is the important piece of truth that blockchain is going to help us uncover?
Well, I echo what Olinga was saying. I think it's, a huge trend in supply chain right now is that alignment with values and sustainability, and demonstrating that you don't have any, conflict minerals or any child labor, all of those things. I'm so glad the consumer population is starting to speak with their dollar, right? Mm-hmm. And blockchain will absolutely enable consumers to make informed buying decisions. So I'm thrilled, and I echo everything that Olinga said. And I'm going to add to that, again, thinking about the nature of supply chains, and what we all really want is efficiency. We really want to be able to do things in the most efficient way possible. Our approach until now, right, has been in supply chain to really manage one functional silo very, very well. I'm going to manage my warehouse very, very well, or I'm going to manage my transportation and logistics very, very well, right? And we can't think that way anymore, right? We have managed those individual elements well, even across our own enterprise. We talk about end-to-end supply chain. We're doing that better and better. What blockchain enables is for our ecosystem to work better together. I mentioned it earlier, but supply chains, one single enterprise depends on their partners for 65% of the value they deliver to their own customers. Those dependencies are real. And again, the more collaborative, the more connected we are as companies, as entities working together to delight those customers, the more efficient and effective we're going to be, again, as that ecosystem participating together. So the technology is ready. We've got to get ourselves ready to collaborate at that level across our partnerships. So that's what excites me, and I look very much forward to.
Well, you've both done an amazing job helping our community start preparing for that change. I think we have sort of worked better together today. So thank you both so much. We're really honoured to have such, competent and accomplished thought leaders on our program. So thank you. So listeners, that's the end of our webinar on blockchain, the 21st century truthsayer. Many thanks to our panel once again, Sherry Diaz and Professor Olinga Tayeed, for their contributions today. To our listeners, I'm sure our guests have left you feeling intrigued to find out more about your organisation could use blockchain in the future. So if you'd like to listen to this webinar again or share it with your peers, we'll be making the on-demand version available on Procurious from tomorrow. Thank you for your time to listen in.